Jason.
Hey, Reg.
So you've said many times that you have never retired, but you've retired many people.
Yes, that is the sort of retirement by proxy that I get to experience quite often.
I love that.
Yeah.
How long did most of those people save for retirement until they actually retired?
That's a great question. And of course, like that answer can be sort of one of those, it depends, right? But generally, we're talking somewhere close to 40 years, right? If you exit, higher education or even high school, right around your, late teens, early 20s, and you're working to your early to mid 60s, that's a 40-year time frame right there.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the default.
Yeah.
You start saving and then you save and save and save and save and save until you retire and stop saving for retirement.
Right. Like that's sort of like, when can you accumulate appropriate resources so that you don't have to work anymore and can still enjoy your lifestyle?
Well, what if you still wanted to work, maybe a little bit, like a semi-retirement kind of thing?
Like sort of just, doing something they're really passionate about, but at the same time, not maybe relying on for your core income.
Yeah, something that doesn't pay as much, or just freeing up some time, more time, maybe half your work time for hobbies or personal activities that you want to enjoy.
Yeah. So something that's just that I think that ultimately, right, that sounds like a good way to sort of ease into, if you will, right, a longer term picture where you're not doing anything, any responsibility for anything, and you can just kind of all you do is hobbies and, catching up on shows and sleeping in and all the fun stuff.
Yes. Oh gosh, that sounds really nice, actually.
Uh-huh.
And I'm also thinking of people who maybe want to reach full financial independence, but also not touch those retirement reserves until a more traditional retirement age.
Well, wouldn't it be just neat to if you could just do what you sort of wanted to do, which would also provide you, right, resources and provide you an income and allow you to build assets and do all those things and not necessarily have to, like I said, rely on it per se, but also know that it's available and, will be useful for you in the future. Sounds like a fantastic scenario.
That is the dream for so many people. And there are lots of different types of retirement. People approach it in so many different ways. And I feel like we're seeing more and more different types kind of pop up over the last handful of years.
Yeah, just instead of that traditional thing, the work 40 years and, get a gold watch and claim Social Security sort of scenario. And a pension, right? Yes, that's right. Gold watch and a pension is the old expression. But yeah, no, right. So there's, right, the FIRE movement, I think, is the first one that comes to mind for me, is as far as just a type of retirement scenario that is, sort of aggressive, if you will.
Yeah, to break down our little acronym there and avoid jargon, FIRE is Financial Independence Retire Early. And over these last few years, even, I've seen different flavors of FIRE come up. And there's one that I really want to focus in on today.
And what flavor of FIRE would that be?
This is one that I have seen on my Instagram reels quite a bit lately. Clearly, my algorithm is pushing me toward it. This one is called Coast Fire, and I had no idea what this was for a while.
Now wait, hold on. Are you firing here? Is that what's happening? You're gonna fire? Is that why your algorithm is so locked in?
I don't know. I haven't really been into it. I don't follow any creators that are part of the FIRE movement.
So
I think it just worked its way into my algorithm, and it was like, hey, Reg, you need to talk with Jason, and you two need to do a podcast on this.
Yeah. Okay. So they were thinking of us, of course, the algorithm folks, and they're
like,
yeah, this would be a good podcast picture. Okay. So what is Coast Fire in a nutshell? What are we talking about here?
Well, I remember the first creator whose Instagram reel I saw basically explained it as, I am done saving for retirement. And they seemed pretty young, maybe somewhere around our age. And I was like, wait, what? You're just going to stop saving for retirement when you're still kind of in your prime earning years? Why would you do that? And as I continued to watch, they explained it as, I already have enough saved. So I don't need to save anymore.
Right. So it's a math problem. It's how much do I need? What's the, Y number of dollars, X number of dollars, whatever variable you want to assign to it that I need in the future. And what do I need to have today? What assumed growth rate? And you can just go through the mechanics of it. And yeah, I suppose you could wind up at that number at any point during your working life.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
But it's taking careful planning if the idea here is that they're not retiring.
They are not retiring, and they are not adding anything to their retirement accounts.
Got it. So yeah, the planning necessary is sort of figuring out that timeline between like when you stop saving, when you start utilizing those resources, and what you do in the middle to bridge the gap. That's where you got to get really locked into your approach here, I'm assuming.
Exactly that. And this also got me thinking about it from the cash flow planning perspective. Like, how do you just fund those retirement accounts so that you can get to the point where you stop? And then how does your cash flow change? Like, maybe you were cutting your discretionary spending earlier on to really ramp up those retirement plan contributions. And then as soon as you reach that magic number for you and stop those retirement contributions, you have a lot more disposable income potentially.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that's part of the point, right? Is it sort of allows you to, initially, it's not allowing you to do anything. It's sort of restricting you to do things. Mm-hmm. But then once you make it over that hurdle, you sort of have more freedoms, if you will, or you don't have to worry about that specific financial goal any longer, right? I mean, that's the idea behind it. Yeah.
Yep, you're putting the work in to get there, maybe a little earlier than some folks who did traditionally save until that retirement date.
Sure.
But that also opens up so many more opportunities.
Also opens up risks. I'm thinking of things, along the lines of, okay, you forecast all of this out and you were expecting, 8% return and you got a, 6% return. And now you've reached the milestone that you were hoping to start using that money for, and you're short, so you need to cut your spending, but right. So there's those parts too, but right, the opportunities that it presents for then the sort of nearer term things that you want to do to enjoy, this wonderful life that we have. Like ultimately, like that's gotta be nice to sort of have some flexibility earlier.
And you made a good point with the risk part. So this might not be for more of the conservative savers out there, because you do have to make a lot of assumptions. What if you run into sequence of returns risk when you stop saving, or when you actually retire, or when you start tapping into those retirement accounts? Or what if tax law changes and you end up in a completely different situation than you had anticipated?
Right.
Or what if inflation creeps up on you and you really do need to trim that spending? The good thing about people who are feeling risky enough to go toward this endeavor is they've already really drastically reduced their discretionary spending in the past to do the saving. So they kind of have that ingrained flexibility. So if they needed to make a change later on, they just have to be flexible again.
They have to be able to sort of like revert to the status that I think a lot of folks go through, especially if you go through like the higher education system and you go, the college kid eating ramen sort of approach, right? Where it's like you're living on pennies a day. It's doable, right? I mean, people are surviving and thriving in that way. It's just not ideal in a lot of cases, right? Mm. But in some scenarios, that's how you bridge those gaps.
And Jason, let's be real. With inflation, ramen does not cost pennies a day anymore. It's probably a bit more than that.
I wonder what does a bowl of ramen run nowadays? I got to go check that out. I'm out of touch. I bet it's what, 50 cents?
I know we both love ramen, and maybe we eat more bougie ramen than your college student out there.
Sure. Right. Yeah. I like the, Jinya ramen, which is amazing ramen shop. Mm-hmm. Right. That sort of thing. But I'm curious. Yeah. Anyway. So,
but going back to our Coast Fire topic here, the traditional Coast Fire, I guess, is like that Instagram creator I was talking about earlier said, where you save and then you stop saving, keep working, keep doing what you were doing, and enjoy the additional cash flow that offers.
Yeah.
And actually retire at a regular retirement age, somewhere within that kind of traditional window.
So you can't support yourself during that I've stopped saving and I have, fully retired phase, right? Like that is something where you're still relying on the income from your job to support your lifestyle.
Yeah.
But presumably, right? I mean, I guess there's a couple of ways to approach this, right? But presumably either, you just have more left over because you're not saving as much, or I guess you also sort of slow down, right? The amount of work that you're doing, sort of glide into it or coast into it, I'm guessing is where this comes from.
Coast into it. You got it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's about sort of reducing the workload, if you will, to match and kind of commensurate with the reduced need for cash to stick away.
Yep. Make your cash inflows, meet your cash outflows. That might come in the way of spending more. That might come in the way of working less.
Mm-hmm.
Or, if you keep working the same amount, instead of funding those retirement accounts, maybe you're funding a taxable investment account. Maybe you're still contributing to that Roth IRA. Maybe you're stashing some in high yield savings so that when you retire maybe earlier than traditional retirement range, you don't have to worry about pulling out taxable funds.
Yeah.
So you can watch some of your expenses.
Why not just continue to build that fund? I mean, is the idea that you reach that certain point and you don't feel like you'll have any additional needs beyond what you originally assumed, and so that you can just, if you're careful enough with the planning and so on. But I just sort of wonder, like, if you continued to sort of say, like, could you retire much earlier, right? Could you accelerate the date, right? The fire date you're actually retiring, and sort of get somewhere in the middle between that coast date, if you will, and today.
Maybe, if that's your goal. But maybe you really enjoy what you're doing. Maybe you like working. You like the people you work with. You like to have conversations and have those relationships. Maybe you feel like it gives you purpose and you want to keep doing the work.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that makes sense that ultimately, like, this can be about passion projects at that point, because you don't necessarily need this, big salary to cover all the saving you need to do for the future. Yeah. So I suppose that can get you into a profession that would be a little more enjoyable or personally sort of fulfilling. Yeah.
And rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other piece of this is, think about those first contributions you make to your retirement accounts. If you are looking at those 40 years between starting work and retiring, they have a lot of time to grow, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's the idea, right? The effect of compounding, given the amount of time that you allow that money to grow.
Yeah. And think about the dollars that you might put in later, like toward the middle of your career. Less time to grow.
Sure.
And even less when you get closer to that ultimate ending work date.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I think that's really the key. That's the key of Coast Fire, is the dollars you would put in later aren't going to be as meaningful as the dollars you'd put in earlier. So you ramp up that savings early, give it tons of time to grow, and give yourself more freedom later on.
Amplifying the effect of compounding by intentionally sort of, not going to say starving yourself, but intentionally living, well below your means, right? So that you can put as much money away into something that will grow for a future goal. Yeah. And that is, frankly, a brilliant approach to it, as we're always saying, like, you can't start early enough, right? As soon as you get your first job, start saving somewhere. Like, if the employer's giving free money, like, make sure you're taking advantage of that. Get your money into Roth IRA, check out an HSA, like all these things that we're talking about, like, do it early. So yeah, I like how the Coast Fire approach sort of locks in on that and harnesses and kind of harvests that benefit.
And that brings me back to the cash flow piece, because to be able to do this, you really need to understand what your discretionary spending is, how you can trim that, and how you can really load up those retirement funds, especially early on, or even toward kind of the middle of your career. So if you're not already, grab a spreadsheet, start using a cash flow tracker of some sort, really understand what your discretionary spending is, how you might be able to trim it, and how you might be able to really stock up those retirement-specific reserves. And then as you head into kind of that coast period, another good time to be looking really closely at your cash flow. Understand what you're spending and how what you've saved will continue to support you when you start to tap into those retirement accounts.
I mean, how important, right? Tracking ultimately is what is going to allow you to understand your reality as it relates to all of this. So knowing where your money is going, knowing what you can cut back on, knowing that, hey, if the things that I wanted to accomplish, right, require X, Y, and Z, like what those amounts actually are, and not sort of speculating on this idea that, well, I can just stick away as much money as I possibly can, sort of summon into my, savings accounts and hope that it's the right amount in 25 years, 40 years, whatever that period is.
Exactly. And you brought it, the whole thing home here.
Yeah.
Because taking the Coast Fire route means that you need to have a good eye on your financial plan.
Yeah.
Pretty regular check-ins to make sure you're still on track. See if you do need to add a little bit more to your retirement funds, maybe early in your Coast period. So you turn off the Coast, turn back on the savings, so that later you can indeed coast and have a successful retirement.
Yeah, it's a smart approach to periodically, just like anything else, check in on that and understand where you're at as opposed to or compared to where you were expecting to be when you initially did it. I love the flexibility of this, the approach that you can save, bunches early on, stop doing that while you have an end goal at mind, but knowing that you sort of have the tools and the skill set, right? I think it's an important part of this, right? The skill set to be able to go lean and mean for a little bit of time to shore something up. I think that's fantastic.
And the different flavors in there. I feel like even Coast Fire has its own different versions. Where you've got the real Coast Fire where you're still working, still earning the same, but coasting. The less work Coast Fire where you are coasting, but you're only working enough to cover your outflows.
Yep.
And then the financial freedom version of Coast Fire where you're not working at all during those coast years, but you're allowing your retirement accounts to continue to grow while you're relying on other assets that you've saved.
Okay. So it's you have some other, I was going to say, how are you supporting yourself in that pure independence scenario, right? It's almost like a fire is what it sounds like, but it's just the sort of separation between, what we would call in air quotes here, retirement assets and maybe non-retirement assets, which could be taxable brokerage accounts, real estate, something along those lines.
Yeah. And maybe that's why my Instagram algorithm sent me there, is because when I looked back at my financial plan after learning more about Coast Fire, I'm kind of on a Coast Fire approach where I don't plan to work for a period, but I also don't plan to tap into those retirement accounts until a more traditional retirement range.
Yeah, it's an interesting approach that you have as far as the kind of way you're segmenting it. And anyone can do that, right? They can segment however they sort of envision that they want their life to play out.
With that, I'm going to take it away with today's big takeaway. That is Coast Fire is Coast Financial Independence Retire Early, where for some period of time, you are no longer contributing to your retirement-specific accounts, allowing them to coast and hopefully grow until you reach some type of work stoppage at a more traditional retirement range in the future. Within that, there are a few different flavors, so if we haven't mentioned the one that you are looking at, reach out to us at podcast@fpfoco.com or hit us up on your favorite social media channels at FPFoco.
Yeah, and that would be, I'd love to hear some perspective and some ideas and thoughts from folks that are coasting, right, or firing, at the present, and just hear sort of what do we miss, what do we leave out. I'd love to learn more from you all. So anyway, hey, that was a fun discussion on Coast Fire. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you soon.
Jason Speciner and Regina Neenan are investment advisor representatives of FPFoco, a registered investment advisor. The information in this podcast is provided for general educational and entertainment purposes only. It may not apply to you or your specific circumstances and should not be considered financial, investment, or tax advice.